Hey guys, so today we're going to be doing my review for Pet Sematary. Now this was an anticipated film for me because I love the original one, the original movie, and the book. The book is actually the first Stephen King book that I ever read. So it's a very, what is my hair doing? I'm sorry. It's a very sentimental story for me, and Stephen King himself has said it's one of his only books that has ever frightened him himself. So it's a very powerful book. I highly recommend reading it if you haven't. And since we are in the era of remakes, which is actually what my next video is going to be about, it's going to be a little bit of a rant, so get ready, be prepared. Not all remakes are fantastic, right? And I was kind of thinking that this movie might be one of those because just based on the trailers. I was very excited for it still because I, had never seen the original in theaters, so it's kind of like when Rings was made, I was excited to see Samara on the big screen, even though the movie itself wasn't the greatest film in the world. I was just excited for the experience, like in the theater and everything. So that's kind of what happened with this movie. I was very much anticipating it, and I went in with lower expectations because of the trailers, which we will get into a little rant about the trailers. But first, let's give a little backstory to this film. So it's done by Kevin Kolsch and Dennis Wiedmeyer, who are actually the director duo of Starry Eyes, which is an amazing film, highly underrated. If you have not seen Starry Eyes, definitely watch it. It is a hidden gem. It's amazing. And if you've never heard of the story or haven't seen the trailers or anything, which at this point I would be very surprised, it's basically about a family that moves to Maine. It's a mother and father, husband-wife couple, and their two kids, Ellie and Gage. Ellie is 9 and Gage is 3. And then they come to discover, at least in this storyline, in this movie, they come to discover a pet cemetery on their property. In the original story, the neighbor Judd is the one that shows them this. And then basically, not so much within the pet cemetery, but kind of beyond that, barrier, I guess you would call it, is I don't want to spoil anything. It's basically just more burial sites, and whatever you bury there doesn't always stay dead. And I will get into kind of the changes that they made within this movie and more stuff like that in the spoilers, and I will give fair warning when I go into the spoilers. Passing through, okay. I'm gonna say right off the bat, there's a couple categories of people I've found that watch this movie and they either like it or they don't like it. Some people are in the middle ground because I think they're looking more at it from a big picture. I'm in the category of being disappointed by this movie. I'm just gonna say that right off the bat. Not a huge fan of this movie, even as a standalone film. I know most people who are upset with this movie and disappointed by it are mad because they changed so much of the story and so much of the plot from the original movie, let alone the book. But for me, also, I was trying to separate myself because I already knew based on the trailers it was going to be a different movie. It was not going to be Pet Sematary that we know and love by Stephen King. I just knew that because they gave so much away in the trailers. So I was trying to go into it with an more open mind, I guess, and try to think of it as its own storyline, kind of just like another interpretation, I guess, of the original book by Stephen King. But even given that mindset and trying to be a little bit more open-minded, I did not like the plot and like where it went and the ending. I just wasn't a fan. It was cheesy. It's a no from me. Maybe it's a little bit unfair for me to have such a strong opinion negatively against it because I am so attached to the original story and the book, on an emotional level and a personal level. So take my opinion with a grain of salt. Of course, form your own opinions, watch other reviews, of course, and, go into it with a open mind if you do still decide to watch it. Just know you're not going to be getting Stephen King's Pet Sematary. That's just a fact. It was definitely a roller coaster for me. I was having like high moments where I'm like, that's a really great redeeming moment right there. It's actually creepy. And then we'd just plummet and I would literally physically roll my eyes. So let's get into a little bit about the trailers. So if you've seen the trailers, you know the twists of the movie. And I'm not sure why they decided to show so much in the trailer and give away so much. Like, there are literal spoilers for the whole movie in the trailer itself, and I'm I could not get away from them. I watched them, so I knew going into it what they were going to be. I think what they wanted to do was show some scenes from like the climax and the end of the movie to build anticipation for the vibe and the, you know, the horror of the film, and they couldn't do that without showing who dies and the twists and the differences between this one and the original. So there were two specific scenes in the trailer that they gave away that were different from the original film, and the most annoying thing about these is not just that these are iconic moments in the movie, in the original movie, they built up the viewer to believe they were going to happen still in this movie, in the new one, which if you had seen the trailers, you knew wasn't gonna happen. So I was really confused when they were building up these moments for these iconic scenes, and it was just a huge letdown because then it's just like 10 seconds later and then it happens, but it's different. That to me was kind of annoying because it's almost like they were giving the viewer what they wanted but then just like took it away because we were like anticipating this moment from the iconic scenes of the original, and then just no, we're not getting that at all. I was just confused why they even built up the scene to be that. If you're gonna go a different direction with the story and go a different direction with these moments, like iconic moments, then just do that. Don't build up the viewer who, like, they knew what they were doing, I think, knowing that the viewer loves the original, they're gonna see the remake, of course. And so if you know the original, you know these scenes, and therefore they were like building it up for those specific viewers, and it just was annoying to me. So the directors say that they made these changes because they had the desire to find a new angle on a familiar story. When you're making an adaptation, you want to do as much new, fresh things that you can because there's already an existing movie. But at the same time, you want to make sure that you're staying true to the essence of the book so that people still feel like they're getting Stephen King's Pet Sematary. And that's all fine and good. And you know, with a remake, I think there are certain things that the viewer is looking for within the remake, and they just changed so much. Like, they changed almost everything, like just the littlest details, like how they stumble upon the Pet Sematary in the first place. I'm not sure why they even changed that. Judd's wife, they changed that. And I don't know why they changed all these smaller things and big things. Like, they changed everything. I get that they wanted to do like a new take on Pet Sematary, but it was just like not, it was a different adaptation of the book, but they just didn't take the important pieces, like really major things that I think made the book and made the original movie, and just changed them, and then they just didn't work as well for me. I will say the highlights of the movie were definitely all the cat actors. They were fantastic, great acting and training on the cat's part. I know there's a lot of like memes kind of going around, especially on Twitter, and there's a whole video I'm gonna link below of the trainer of the cats for Pet Sematary. I think it's amazing. Also, I want to say this movie is not that scary. There were moments where it was so cool, and those are the ups, the highs that I was talking about that were redeeming, and I was like, cool, this is beautiful and stuff like that. But even given these like more subtle horrifying imagery that we get sometimes throughout the film, there were they're outweighed by jump scares. There are tons of jump scares in this, and you guys know I'm not a fan of jump scares. A couple here and there, that's fine. The first jump scare definitely got me, even though it's in the trailer, when they're like standing by the house and the truck drives by really fast, which is ominous. I liked that jump scare because it felt like that, like we were there, you know, because it probably would have scared me in real life, and they could probably hear the truck coming anyway. A lot of other pointless jump scares, so pretty much every other jump scare after that was pointless to me. I do have to say I didn't mind the new take on Zelda, which is the wife's sister. There's a whole backstory there, and I'm so happy they kept most of that in, even though they did change some things. I actually really liked the change with Zelda, and I'm not gonna say what it is right now, but I liked it. I think it was creepy and scary, and I think they did an okay job with that part of the movie. So I am gonna get into spoilers, even though they do a great job of spoiling the movie themselves if you've watched the trailer, but I'm gonna leave the details of what they spoil in my spoiler version, because I know some people have avoided certain trailers for the film because they've heard of the spoilers. So now I'm gonna get into those and into the spoilers and end of the movie and things like that. So if you haven't watched it yet, tune out now. So the major difference within this movie that I think most people are kind of upset about, although it could have been kind of cool. And at first I was like, that's different. I thought it was still gonna go the same way that it did in the original. But basically the twist is that Gage, the son, is not the one to be hit by the truck, because that's what happens in the original, in case you didn't know. He is hit by the semi-truck going down the road, and then the dad ends up burying his son in the kind of tribal grounds, and he is resurrected and comes back, but he's not the same. In this movie, we have Ellie that gets hit by the truck. They still build up the moment like Gage is going to die, and I was just annoyed because it's like, I know she dies. Like, I know he's not gonna die because you told us that in the trailer. I'm spitting. I'm just so upset that the trailer spoiled everything. And I realized why they did this like immediately, and that is because in today's world of horror, I think dead little girls are creepier than dead little boys, and that's just a given fact. I feel like when Pet Sematary came out, it was kind of like almost like Chucky in a way, you know. It was like a little boy is scary enough for that era, but now I don't think it would have been as horrifying because it's literally a 3-year-old boy killing people. I don't know if that's that scary, but a 9-year-old little creepy dead girl, that's different. And they actually confirmed this and said, including an 8-year-old girl being more physically intimidating than a 3-year-old boy. And the directors say, we changed it from Gage to Ellie, then obviously Ellie then being this character that could now have the awareness to know what's going on with her and to have conversations about it. It changed the scenes afterward. And I think that is my biggest issue with the film, is that they went in with this change in mind, right? But they had not finished. It seemed like they didn't finish the movie, and so they had said that the ending changed organically during filmmaking because it was a different story now. They could not make it the same story because she was aware that she was dead, right? And she was aware of things and would talk to people, and that's just completely different than a 3-year-old boy that is just killing people just to do it, right? She has like this awareness of the situation, and that makes it completely different. And they said it wasn't necessarily an idea like we have to change the ending, it was just sort of other things changed within the movie. So once they made that change from Gage to Ellie, they had to then go from there and figure out how to continue the film and finish the movie appropriately with her being the dead one. But then they say that multiple versions of the ending were written and a couple of them were shot, and then they would show these multiple endings to different audiences and see their reception to it, and this is the one that stuck, I guess. The producer says a lot of times with endings you kind of just let the audience tell you what they're feeling. We got to screen both of them to people and it just seemed like audiences really responded to that one. And so with Ellie being the creepy girl, there was a lot more acting involved, I think, and a lot more portrayal of like creep factor versus just a little boy holding a scalpel, you know? And to me, that didn't really land. There were some moments where she was creepy, but I think more times than not, it was more cringy, and yeah, some of her lines were the parts that made me roll my eyes because they were just so cheesy. Like the writing of her lines once she was dead was pretty cheesy. And then the way that they end the film, I was not a fan of, because basically Ellie ends up killing her mom, and then somehow a 9-year-old can drag her mom through the forest, up this barrier, up huge flight of stairs, I don't know, stairs built into the mountain, and then up to the grounds, and then bury her, and then for some reason when she's fighting her dad she still has 9-year-old strength, but then a second ago she was burying her mom, dragging her through the woods. I don't know. It just didn't feel realistic, and it was just, the ending felt so rushed. So she buries her mom, then the mom comes back, kills the husband, and then they bury the husband, and then he comes back, and then they all start walking towards Gage, who's in the car. And then it's implying that, oh, they're gonna kill Gage and resurrect him so they can all be together. This ending felt so much lighter to me and less tragic than the original story. There are moments where we see Lewis's desperation to have his family together again. Obviously when he's digging up his dead daughter in the cemetery and then reburying her on the tribal grounds. That's an intense moment, and I'm not gonna say that it's not in this one, but that's kind of where it ends, like where your sympathy and where the tragedy kind of ends for me, because then the rest of it is just like a cheesy horror film and you're not really connected with the characters emotionally at that point. So those are all my thoughts on the remake of Stephen King's Pet Sematary. I'd love to hear your thoughts down below. Feel free to disagree with me also in the comments and explain if you liked the film. But yeah, just share your thoughts if you've seen it down below. I hope you enjoyed, and I'll talk to you soon.